The Exilari fleet entered Earth's orbit like silent predators. Their ships, dark and massive, floated against the night sky, casting long shadows over the blue planet below. From the command bridge of the Void Reaper, Supreme Commander Xalzor watched the tiny world beneath him with amusement. "Pathetic," he muttered, his mandibles clicking in disgust. "One small planet, one weak species. They have no place in the great expanse." His officers chuckled, their eyes scanning the readings. Earth was primitive, barely stepping into space. No advanced weapons, no planetary defenses. A single insignificant world. The Exilari Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. Some had fought back. Some had begged for mercy. But this would be easy. "Deploy the first wave," Xalzor commanded. "Let them see true power." The attack ships descended, slicing through the clouds like black daggers. The first battalion of Exilari warriors landed in key locations: major cities, military bases, power plants. But as soon as they stepped foot on Earth, something felt wrong. There was no resistance, no alarms, no panicked civilians running. The streets were empty. The air was thick, heavy, as if the planet itself was watching them. "Report," one commander barked through the comms. "Static. Ground team, respond." Nothing. In less than 2 minutes, the entire first wave had gone silent. Xalzor narrowed his eyes. "Send the second wave." More ships descended. More troops deployed. Still no sign of battle. Then the screams began. Sharp, short bursts of terror over the comms. "Something is here. We can't." Static. "The shadows are moving." Static. One by one, their signals vanished. Xalzor's claws tightened on the console. This was not a battle. This was something else. "Scans," he growled. "I want to see everything." The fleet's sensors spread across the surface. They picked up no human soldiers, no weapons, but they detected movement. Everywhere. The trees shifted unnaturally. The rivers flowed in reverse. The wind howled, whispering in a language unknown. Then the main ship's alarms screamed. Energy surge detected. An officer shouted, "But it's—" He stopped, his face pale. "It's coming from the planet itself." Xalzor turned back to the view screen, watching as the sky darkened over Earth. The clouds churned violently, lightning flashing in eerie, unnatural patterns. A low rumble echoed through space. Not from an explosion. Not from human weapons. From Earth itself. And for the first time in his life, Supreme Commander Xalzor felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The silence was unnatural. Supreme Commander Xalzor stood motionless, his claws gripping the console of the Void Reaper. The battle should have been over by now, but there had been no battle. There had been nothing. His warriors had landed on Earth, yet not a single one had reported back. Hundreds of trained Exilari soldiers vanished. A cold feeling crawled up his spine. "This is impossible," one officer muttered, scanning the data feed. "Humans don't have the technology to jam our communications." But it wasn't just communications. The fleet's bioscanners weren't detecting the missing troops at all. As if they had never existed. Xalzor took a deep breath. Deploy the war drones. Within seconds, 1,000 mechanical hunters shot toward the surface. Unlike living soldiers, these machines couldn't feel fear. They had no minds to break. They were the perfect tools for scouting unknown dangers. The fleet watched as the drones swept across the cities. Their cameras transmitted images back to the flagship. Abandoned streets, silent buildings. No humans, no Exilari, just emptiness. Then one drone's feed flickered. Xalzor leaned in, paused the footage. The screen froze. Something had been there, just for a fraction of a second. A dark shape, shifting in the mist. Xalzor's claws dug into the console, enhanced the image. The screen adjusted, zooming in. But there was nothing. The shape was gone. A cold murmur spread through the bridge. Even the officers, Warriors who had seen countless wars were uneasy. Then, one by one, the drones began to fall silent. First, one feed went dark, then another, then 10, then hundreds. Within 30 seconds, the entire drone fleet was gone. Zalzur's breathing quickened. 1,000 machines, erased, without a single explosion, without a single trace. The whispers in his mind grew louder. Something was hunting them, something far beyond their understanding. For the first time in his long, merciless career, Zalzur understood one terrifying truth. They were not the invaders. They were the prey. The Void Reaper drifted in orbit, its crew frozen in uneasy silence. The mighty auxiliary fleet, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, now faced an enemy they could neither see nor understand. Supreme Commander Zalzur stood at the command bridge, his golden eyes fixed on the dead screens before him. 1,000 war drones. Gone. The silence from Earth was suffocating. Zalzur turned sharply. Send in the heavy infantry. Full armor. Full weaponry. No more scouting. We take this world now. His officers hesitated. Sir, if the first waves were eliminated, then we escalate. Zalzur's voice was cold, sharp. We burn everything. Minutes later, the real invasion began. Massive landing ships descended from orbit, cutting through the thick, swirling clouds over Earth. 10,000 heavily armored Silari warriors deployed across key locations. This time, they did not come as scouts. They came as executioners. Their heavy boots thundered against the empty streets. Their plasma rifles hummed with lethal energy. If there was an enemy, they would find it. Then the reports came in. No contact. Cities are empty. No bodies, no resistance. It made no sense. Where were the humans? Then, in the ruined streets of an abandoned metropolis, one squad saw something move. At first, it was just a flicker at the edge of their vision. Then, it was everywhere. Shadows shifted unnaturally. Buildings seemed to breathe. The air hummed with something ancient and alive. One soldier turned his visor toward an alleyway. I see something. The words died in his throat. He was staring at nothing. But something was staring back. His armor's sensors went wild. His heartbeat spiked. His claws tightened around his weapon. Then he was gone. Not a scream, not a struggle, just gone. His squad turned, weapons raised. Nothing. No blood. No sign he was ever there. Then, more flickers, more shifting shadows. The soldiers opened fire. Their weapons refused to work. The plasma rifles hissed and sputtered. The energy packs drained instantly. Something was feeding on their power. Then the voices began. They weren't Silari voices. They weren't human. They came from everywhere. Soft whispers that slipped into their helmets, into their minds. The squad leader fell to his knees, clutching his head. His own voice turned into a horrified scream. And one by one, the soldiers disappeared. Not killed. Claimed. In orbit, Zalzur watched his monitors in growing horror. His strongest warriors had landed. And now, they were vanishing. A war without a battle. An enemy without a face. And for the first time, Zalzur asked himself the question he should have asked before coming here. What is this planet? Supreme Commander Zalzur stood frozen, staring at the endless streams of failed transmissions on the command screen. Thousands of warriors, gone. No screams, no battles, no bodies. His officers shifted uneasily around him. The Void Reaper was silent, too silent. Even the hum of the ship's power core felt dim, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Zalzur exhaled slowly. This wasn't war. This was something far worse. He turned to his second-in-command. What do the scanners say? The officer hesitated. Sir, the scanners detect nothing. Zalzur's mandibles tightened. That is impossible. A planet full of 8 billion humans. Even if they had all fled their bodies, They're machines. Something should be detectable. But the sensors showed only a void. Nothing moved. Nothing existed. As if Earth itself had erased its own inhabitants. The whispers in his mind grew louder. Something was wrong with this world. Then the Void Reaper shuddered violently. Zalzor snapped his gaze to the main viewport. Outside, the entire fleet was shifting, their ships rattling as if space itself was shaking. "Report," he barked. An officer gripped his console. "Sir, the fleet is..." His voice choked off. Zalzor turned. The officer was floating. His body lifted off the ground. Not zero gravity. Not a power failure. Something else was pulling him. The crew screamed as the ship trembled, alarms blaring across the bridge. "The planet," another officer yelled. It's generating a gravitational pulse." Zalzor's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Earth was too small to create this kind of force. No natural world could pull ships from orbit. And yet, the entire fleet was beginning to drift toward the planet. On the surface, the auxiliary soldiers who remained looked up to the sky in terror. The clouds above them swirled unnaturally. The stars were disappearing, one by one. The air felt thicker. The ground hummed. One soldier dropped to his knees, his claws gripping his skull. "Do you hear it?" he whispered. The others turned toward him. "Hear what?" The soldier lifted his face. His black eyes were glowing. "The planet," he said, his voice hollow. "It's awake." On the Void Reaper, Zalzor watched in horror as a storm unlike any seen before consumed Earth. The entire atmosphere shifted, glowing with an unnatural energy. And then, the voices spoke, not from the speakers, not from the comms, from inside their minds. Zalzor's claws clenched. What is this?" A deep, ancient whisper filled his thoughts. "You came uninvited. Now, you will stay." Zalzor staggered backward, breathing heavily. For the first time in his life, he knew what it was like to be prey. The Void Reaper groaned under an invisible force, its metal frame trembling as the gravitational pulse from Earth grew stronger. Across the command bridge, officers scrambled at their consoles, their claws frantically tapping on control panels. "Engines at full power," an officer yelled. "We must break free." The thrusters of the entire fleet roared to life, but it was futile. The ships did not move. Zalzor watched in cold horror as the mighty warships of the auxiliary empire drifted downward. The once proud fleet, conquerors of countless worlds, was now helpless. "Impossible," he growled. "This planet should not be capable of this." And yet, it was. The clouds below churned like a living thing, stretching toward the fleet. Lightning danced wildly across the atmosphere, but there was no thunder. Instead, a low hum filled the air, vibrating deep in Zalzor's bones. The same whispers invaded his mind again. "You should not have come." His claws curled into fists. Enough of this madness. Fire upon the planet. Destroy everything. His officers hesitated. "But, Supreme Commander..." "Do it," Zalzor snarled. With a heavy thud, the fleet's orbital cannons charged. The energy from thousands of plasma weapons lit up the darkness of space. The order was given. Fire. The sky was set ablaze as the fleet unleashed death upon Earth. From the surface, the auxiliary ground forces watched in awe and relief as the heavens burned. Their fleet had not abandoned them. The sky glowed with plasma energy, streaks of destruction hurtling toward the planet's surface. But then, something happened. The moment the plasma blasts entered Earth's atmosphere, the air rippled. The attacks froze in midair. Glowing streaks of destruction halted, as if caught in invisible hands. Then, one by one, the attacks turned around. The plasma bolts, powerful enough to destroy entire cities, were now aimed back at the fleet. There was no time to react. The energy beams raced upward, faster than before. And then, the auxiliary screamed. The fleet shattered as their own weapons tore through them. Gigantic warships, built to endure the worst battles, exploded in the blackness of space. Zalzor fell to his knees as the command bridge shook violently. The Void Reaper had taken a direct hit, warning sirens blaring in his ears. This isn't possible," he whispered. Earth had turned their own weapons against them. The whispers returned, louder than before. "You thought us weak. You thought us alone." Zalzor gritted his teeth, his body trembling. No species should have this power. Then something far worse happened. The stars began to disappear. One by one, the distant lights of space vanished. Not because they were moving, because something was swallowing them. Zalzor's blood ran cold. Earth was no ordinary planet. It was something else, something far older, something far more dangerous. And it was not finished with them yet. The Void Reaper was dying. Warning sirens screamed through the command bridge as fires spread across the ship. The once mighty warship, built to dominate the stars, was now adrift, helpless against the force pulling it toward Earth. Zalzor clutched the railing, his golden eyes filled with something alien to him. Fear. His fleet, the pride of the Xilari Empire, had been reduced to wreckage. But it wasn't the destruction that terrified him. It was Earth itself. "Sir," a trembling officer called out. "The stars. They are vanishing." Zalzor forced himself to look. The vast, infinite cosmos was shrinking. The distant lights of space were being devoured by something unseen. No, not unseen. By Earth. The planet was growing larger. Not physically, but in presence. It was no longer just a world. It was something alive. Something that had been waiting. And now it had awakened. On the surface, the remaining Xilari warriors were lost in madness. Some had dropped their weapons, their eyes empty, their minds shattered by the voices whispering in their heads. Others fired wildly into the air, screaming at enemies they could not see. But there were no enemies, because Earth itself was the enemy. One soldier fell to his knees, his breathing ragged. "This isn't a planet," he gasped. Another turned toward him, his mandibles twitching. "Then what is it?" The first soldier looked up at the swirling, unnatural sky. "It's a prison." The others froze. A prison? The thought sent chills through their bones. But then, a rumbling sound shook the air. The ground trembled. The sky darkened further. And then they saw it. Something moving beneath the earth. Vast, shifting shadows, pulsing like the heartbeat of an ancient beast. One of the warriors screamed. The planet itself was alive. And worse, something was trying to escape. Zalzor's breathing was ragged. His ship was failing. His soldiers were lost. And the voices in his mind were stronger than ever. Then, for the first time, the whispers formed a single, clear message. "Leave." Zalzor's eyes widened. "We give you this chance. Leave, or be consumed." The command bridge was silent. Every officer had heard it. The whispers weren't begging. They were warning. This wasn't just about Earth. Something was sealed here. Something that Xilari had disturbed. Zalzor clenched his jaw. He had been a fool. Earth wasn't a primitive world. It was a trap. And the Xilari had stepped right into it. The Void Reaper was breaking apart. The once mighty warship, forged in the heart of Xilari's greatest shipyards, was now crumbling under an unseen force. Panels ripped away, lights flickered, and the ship's core hummed with erratic, dying energy. Zalzor could barely stand as the ship lurched downward, Earth's impossible gravitational pull dragging it toward the surface. His fleet was gone. His army was lost. And now he had one final choice. Run, or share their fate. "Commander," an officer screamed. "A single jump might be possible, but only if we divert power from all non-essential systems." Zalzor's claws curled. His pride screamed at him to stay, to fight, to understand what was happening. But his instincts, his will to survive, told him otherwise. He slammed his fist on the control panel. Do it. The remaining crew scrambled to obey, shutting down everything except the hyperdrive. But before they could engage, the whispers returned, louder than ever. You should not have come. Zalzor clenched his skull as his vision blurred. The voice was inside him, inside them all. You have seen what must never be seen. Zalzor gritted his teeth. What are you? Silence. Then, a terrible, deafening sound ripped through space. It was not a scream, not a word. It was a warning. And suddenly, the gravitational pull weakened. The whispers faded. The ship's systems flickered back to life. Earth was letting them go. Zalzor didn't hesitate. Jump. Now. The last of the fleet's engines roared as the Void Reaper ripped itself from Earth's grasp. The ship vanished into the void, escaping just as the planet sealed itself once more. Far away, in the silence of deep space, Zalzor sat in the ruins of his warship, staring at the dark expanse before him. He had won countless battles, conquered countless species, but never had he felt so small. Earth was not a world to be taken. It was a prison for something so ancient, so powerful, that even the universe itself had locked it away, and Axillari had nearly set it free. Zalzor closed his eyes, his breathing steady. His empire would demand an explanation. His people would want revenge. But he knew the truth. There would be no second war. Because next time, Earth wouldn't let them leave.